Life is a river, ever flowing, ever shifting, carving valleys in silence, reshaping the earth with gentle persistence. And just like the river, we too are being shaped, not always by thunderous moments, but by the quiet erosion of the familiar, the subtle restlessness that whispers in the stillness of our souls. There are seasons when the current slows, inviting us to linger, to learn, but there are also moments when the waters churn, nudging us toward uncharted shores, not as a punishment, but as a calling. Perhaps you have felt it, that sacred dissonance, that quiet knowing that you were not meant to remain where you are. Perhaps life itself is waiting for you to rise, to listen, to step into the grander story being written through you. For in the great symphony of existence, even silence has a purpose, and every pause is but the prelude to a divine crescendo. Will you answer when the music calls your name? There comes a moment in life when everything around you seems unchanged, yet something within you feels different. You wake up to the same routine, walk the same familiar paths, speak the same words, but deep down there is a quiet restlessness, a whisper in the stillness asking, is this all there is? It is not a loud voice, not a sudden thunderclap from the heavens. No, it is softer, gentler, like the first hint of dawn breaking over the horizon. It does not demand your attention, but it lingers, a stirring, a knowing, a feeling you cannot quite name, but one you cannot ignore. Some call it boredom, but it is more than that. Some call it dissatisfaction, but that is not quite right either. This is something deeper, something sacred. It is the soul's way of telling you that the chapter you are living is nearing its end, and a new one is waiting to be written. But here is the challenge. Most people silence the whisper. They drown it out with busyness, with noise, with the comfort of what is familiar. They convince themselves that this feeling will pass, that they should be grateful for what they have, that it is foolish to long for something more. And so they stay. Not because they are truly at peace, but because staying is easier than facing the unknown. Yet life has a way of nudging us forward. If we ignore the whisper long enough, it does not fade. It grows. It turns into frustration, into exhaustion, into the slow erosion of joy. What once felt comfortable begins to feel confining. The things that once satisfied us no longer do. And no matter how tightly we hold on, the whisper remains, growing louder with each passing day. This is not a sign of failure. It is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that something within you is awakening. Because you were never meant to stay the same. You were never meant to cling to what was. When life is calling you toward what could be. The very nature of existence is movement. Rivers do not stop flowing, stars do not stop burning, and seasons do not cease to change. And neither should you. So I ask you today, what is stirring in your soul? What is that quiet voice trying to tell you? Have you been ignoring it, pushing it aside, convincing yourself that it is nothing? Or will you listen? Because that whisper is not random. It is not meaningless. It is the voice of something greater, something divine, reminding you that your story is not finished yet. And if you dare to listen, if you dare to step beyond the safety of the familiar, you may just find that the life waiting for you is far greater than the one you are afraid to leave behind. There comes a time when we look around at our lives and realize that the things that once excited us, once filled us with purpose, have somehow lost their spark. The work we do, the routines we keep, the places we go, they all remain the same, yet something feels different. It is not that anything is wrong exactly, it is that nothing is growing. And just as a tree that ceases to grow will eventually wither, so too does the soul when it is kept in the same place for too long. At first it is subtle. The days blur together. The passion you once had starts to fade. The things that used to challenge you no longer do. But you tell yourself it is normal. You tell yourself you are just tired. You tell yourself that if you keep pushing through, the feeling will pass. But the feeling does not pass. It lingers, it settles, and if you are not careful, it takes root. Some people live their whole lives like this, trapped in a space where nothing grows. Not because they are incapable of more, not because their time has passed, but because they have mistaken comfort for peace. They have mistaken familiarity for fulfillment. And so they stay in jobs that no longer inspire them, relationships that no longer nourish them, routines that no longer challenge them, not because these things are bad, but because they have outgrown them. And if you have ever tried to fit into something you have outgrown, you know how uncomfortable it becomes. But here is the truth. Life was never meant to be a place of stagnation. Everything in creation speaks of movement, of renewal. The tides rise and fall. The seasons change. The caterpillar does not stay in its cocoon. It was never meant to. It was meant to break free, to spread its wings, to become something new. And yet how many of us stay inside the cocoon, afraid to leave? Because stepping into something new means leaving something behind. And leaving something behind, especially something that once meant so much to us, can feel like a loss. Life, it can feel like failure, but it is not. It is growth. It is life's way of calling you forward. It is the divine reminder that there is more ahead, but you cannot reach it if you refuse to move. So if you feel stuck, if you feel like you are going through the motions but nothing is changing, ask yourself, have you stopped growing? Have you settled into something that no longer feeds your soul? Have you mistaken the comfort of the known for the fullness of what could be? Because if the answer is yes, then perhaps this season of your life is not meant to last forever. Perhaps it is time to let go, to step out, to trust that what is waiting for you is far greater than what you are afraid to leave behind. There are moments in life when something feels off, though we can't quite put our finger on it. The rhythm we once moved to, the melody that once gave us joy, now feels out of tune. We go through the motions, smiling, working, speaking, doing everything just as we always have, but deep down, we sense the discord. The harmony is gone. The music of our lives, the song we were meant to sing, no longer sounds the same. At first, we ignore it. We tell ourselves that every life has its off seasons, that if we just hold on a little longer, things will go back to how they were. But they don't. Because the song hasn't disappeared, it's just no longer the one we are meant to be playing. You see, life moves in movements, like a great symphony. There is a time for certain melodies to rise, for certain rhythms to carry us forward. And there is a time when that melody must change, when a new movement must begin. But many of us resist the shift. We cling to the old tune because it is familiar, because it once brought us joy, because it feels safe. And so instead of listening to the new song trying to emerge, we keep playing the same notes over and over again, hoping they will sound the way they used to. But they don't. The truth is, we are not meant to stay in the same movement forever. We are not meant to play one song for the entirety of our lives. Growth requires transition. Transformation requires new melodies. And if we refuse to change, if we keep forcing the same old notes, we will find ourselves trapped in a song that no longer belongs to us. Some people spend years in this place. They feel the dissonance, the tension, the lack of joy, but they convince themselves that it is just a rough patch. They stay in jobs that no longer challenge them, relationships that no longer align with who they are becoming, habits that no longer bring them peace. And rather than step into the unknown, they choose to live with the dissonance. But here's the thing. Dissonance is not a punishment. It is an invitation. It is life's way of telling you that a new song is waiting to be played. It is a sign that you are ready for something different, something deeper, something more in tune with the person you are becoming. And so I ask you, have you been playing the same song for too long? Have you been ignoring the quiet invitation to step into a new rhythm, a new season, a new movement? Because if you have, then perhaps it is time to stop resisting the change. Perhaps it is time to listen to the new melody rising within you, because the music of your life is still being written, and the most beautiful notes may be the ones you have yet to play. Sometimes, change does not come as a whisper. It does not arrive gently like a quiet thought nudging you forward. No, sometimes it comes as a storm, fierce, undeniable, shaking the very ground beneath your feet. You lose the job you thought you would always have. A door you were sure would open suddenly slams shut. A relationship you believed would last forever begins to fall apart. And in those moments, when everything seems to be unraveling, you wonder if life has turned against you. You wonder if you have been abandoned. But what if you have not been abandoned at all? What if instead you are being redirected? Because there are times when we refuse to move, when we hold on to something so tightly that life has no choice but to take it from our grasp. Not to punish us, not to harm us, but to lead us somewhere we would never have gone on our own. Think back on your life for a moment. How many times has something fallen apart, only for you to look back later and realize that it was never meant to last? How many times have you been forced to let go of something, only to find that it was making room for something greater? But in the moment, it does not feel that way. In the moment, it feels like loss. It feels like confusion. It feels like standing at the edge of an unfamiliar road with no map, no direction, no understanding of where to go next. And that is when fear creeps in. That is when we start to question everything. But I want you to hear this. Sometimes the things that seem like endings are not endings at all. They are beginnings in disguise. Sometimes the disruption is not destruction, but divine intervention. Sometimes life closes a door because we were never meant to walk through it in the first place. Yet how often do we fight against this? How often do we try to force the old path to remain open, to rebuild what was already meant to fall away? We cling to the past, not realizing that by doing so, we are missing the future waiting to unfold. But the longer we resist, the longer we remain stuck. Because life will not move us forward until we are willing to loosen our grip, to trust that there is something beyond what we can see. So if you are standing in the middle of a storm right now, if you are looking at the broken pieces of a plan that didn't work out, do not despair. Do not believe that this is the end of your story, because what feels like a breaking may just be a breakthrough. What feels like loss may in time reveal itself to be grace. And if you have the courage to trust, to step forward even when the path is unclear, you may just find that the road you never planned to take leads you exactly where you were always meant to be. There was a time when you dreamed without hesitation, when you carried a vision so clear, so alive, that it felt almost inevitable. Maybe it was a calling placed on your heart, a passion that set your soul on fire, a purpose that made you feel like you were stepping into something greater than yourself. But somewhere along the way, life happened. Responsibilities piled up. The world told you to be realistic. Fear whispered that you weren't good enough, that you were too late, that the dream was too big, or that you were too small. And so, little by little, you let it go. Not all at once. No, dreams rarely die suddenly. They fade. They get buried beneath routines, obligations, the expectations of others. And before you know it, the thing that once made you come alive is nothing more than a distant memory, something you tell yourself belonged to another time, another version of you. But the soul does not forget. You see, a dream that was placed within you for a reason does not simply disappear. It lingers, it waits, and every so often it resurfaces. not to torment you, but to remind you that it is still there, that it is still possible, that what you once longed for was never meant to be discarded, only delayed. But here's the question. When that dream rises again, do you listen, or do you push it back down, telling yourself it is too late, that you missed your chance, that the time has passed? Because that is what so many people do. They let the weight of life convince them that dreaming is for the young, that change is for the brave, that stepping into something new requires a certainty they do not have. They believe that the dream is gone, when in reality, it is only sleeping, waiting for them to wake up, waiting for them to wake up, waiting for them to believe again. And if you're honest with yourself, you've felt it, haven't you? That quiet nudge, that thought that creeps in when you least expect it, whispering, what if? What if it's not too late? What if that passion you buried wasn't meant to die? I want you to hear this today. It is not too late. You have not missed your chance. If that longing still stirs in your heart, it is because it was placed there for a purpose. And if it was placed there for a purpose, then there is still time to step into it. But you have to decide. You have to be willing to reach back for the thing you let go of. You have to silence the voices that tell you it is impossible, that you are not ready, that the dream is out of reach. Because the truth is, what was meant for you will always call you back. And the only question left to answer is, will you answer when it does? There are moments in life when we come face to face with a choice. We stand at a crossroads, feeling the weight of what is behind us and the uncertainty of what lies ahead. And in those moments, something inside us hesitates. Not because we don't know what to do, but because we do. We know the road we are meant to take. We feel it deep in our bones. But fear steps in, doubt creeps up, and so instead of moving forward, we wait. We tell ourselves that we need more time, that we need a clearer sign, that we need absolute certainty before we take the next step. But life does not offer certainty. It offers opportunities, and the question is never whether the path will be clear, it is whether we have the courage to walk it anyway. You see, fear will always give you reasons to stay where you are. It will whisper that you are not ready, that you might fail, that stepping into the unknown is too risky, too uncomfortable, too costly. But what fear will never tell you is what it will cost you to stay, because staying when you are meant to move forward has a cost. And often that cost is joy, that cost is purpose, that cost is waking up one day and realizing that you spent more time waiting for the right moment than you did living the life you were meant to live. And so I ask you, how long have you been standing at the edge of something new? How long have you been feeling the pull to step forward, yet holding yourself back? Because at some point you have to decide that the fear of staying the same is greater than the fear of stepping into the unknown. You were never meant to live a life dictated by hesitation. You were never meant to stand at the threshold of change forever. Life moves, time moves, and so must you, because there is something waiting for you on the other side of your fear. There is something beautiful, something sacred, something more than you could have imagined, but you will never know it if you never take the step. And so, if you are waiting for a sign, let this be it. If you are waiting for a voice to tell you it is time, hear it now, because your life is still unfolding and the next chapter will not write itself. But you must be willing to turn the page.